This sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to make a brief contribution to this debate. But before I start, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the good people of St. John for having the faith and confidence in me to be here again today. And I truly believe that, you know, in the words of that song, the goodness of God is following me. Mr. Speaker, this is interesting. I always try to look at how the work that we do in this place can benefit the constituents of St. John, and in this case, the young people of St. John. The Prime Minister, in her contribution, I believe, mentioned this as being a tool of empowerment. And I too want to attach those sentiments to myself, because youth work is not something that is strange or foreign to me. And it is interesting to note that whenever the Barbados Labour Party is taking the reins of government, that persons within Barbados, particularly the young people in Barbados, are the ones who are empowered. So when I hear that the Prime Minister mentioned a tool of empowerment, I can understand. And, you know, we have changed the script in a positive way. Some of the casts, Mr. Speaker, would have moved and new members were added. But at the end of the day, proactive government still remain as a result of the Barbados Labour Party. And I mention the importance of this because I believe that we have a number of young persons in that constituency of St. John that is rising, by the way, that can benefit from this particular amendment to the Constitution. And when I mention the fact that whenever the Barbados Labour Party is in government, that our young people benefit and benefit tenfold, there's evidence to suggest that what I'm saying is true. In 1994, I was privileged to be a part of a ministry that was then under the stewardship of our current Prime Minister, and she introduced a program, the Youth Development Program, that benefited young persons in this country for a period of at least 14 years. And when I look at that particular time frame, it was a period when youth work in the Caribbean, we were setting the trend. We were at the zenith in relation to what youth work constitute in the Caribbean. I was also present in those 10 years from 2008 to 2018 when youth work in Barbados hit rock bottom. And I say that without apology, because things that happened during those 14 years as it relates to youth work, and I heard a member from the city refer to his involvement at that time and other members who came through during those fantastic years of 1994 to 2008. And we saw during that period where young persons who reside or who congregate on the blocks were provided with a second chance. And I was intimately involved in the process, so I can speak to it with a level of certainty, because Project Oasis was one of those initiatives that was changing the lives and providing a second chance for those guys who are on the blocks. And, you know, I seriously believe that it was a travesty during those, we usually refer to them as those dark 10 years, because you had a government during the period that had a youth manifesto, and today you cannot point to a single initiative out of that youth manifesto that materialized on the landscape in Barbados. So I say to you, I was there for the 10 years when we were at the zenith, and I was there for the 10 years when we were at the very, very bottom. We came again in 2018, Mr. Speaker, and again we saw the benefits to young people, where one of the major things, the fees for university was reversed, where you had that 10 years where that particular government removed that from our young people. So again, the Barbados Labour Party coming to the fore, and you're seeing the changes, the positive changes that can impact our young people across this country. I have now returned, so to speak, to my roots, and I would have mentioned at a meeting that I'm there now with different shoes, and I'm seeing again the vibe or the interest again in what is happening in youth work. This would have started in 2018, and we have programs, for example, called the Pathway Program and Get Into Program. And these two programs at the ministry are focusing primarily on providing an opportunity for persons to be trained for the world of work. They're honing their skills at the ministry in terms of providing the necessary counseling, providing personal development training, that when they hit the world of work, that they move smoothly. The transition is one that is very, very smooth. What we're looking to do, Mr. Speaker, is to expand the program. Only Sunday night I was at an event and I was interacting with an employer, and she was singing the praises of the program and the fact that when persons hit her business, they were ready for the world of work. Everything was in place in terms of providing that customer service. And these are the things that are happening in the youth development program. These are the things that are happening in the ministry. One of the other programs that we're looking to rebirth is the School Leavers Tracy Survey. And this is an initiative, this is a program where at the end of every school year, the youth officers go to the secondary school for those persons who are exiting the school system to gather information in terms of planning. And it helps us in terms of the programming, what the young people are looking to do, what it is, or how can the ministry buttress whatever they're doing in order to strengthen their capacity going forward. And this is something that, like I said, is happening within the ministry. All of these programs we're looking to expand. Only this week, Mr. Speaker, we are looking at the possibility of starting a SAT tutoring program that is run by central government, because we have a lot of young athletes who possess the skills and they're looking to go overseas to do scholarships. But the process of preparing them to do the SATs is being done, in a sense, at an ad hoc basis. We have maybe 2 or so individuals who are providing that training. But if you can imagine a youngster from the constituency of St. John whose parents do not necessarily have the means to pay for that tuition, then this is someone with skill sets who will fall through the cracks. And I have asked that we look at this program and ensure that this particular program is coming from central government so that everybody is now empowered. So when Prime Minister mentioned a tool of empowerment, this tool of empowerment is not only in the amendment for the Constitution, but it is running through my ministry in relation to what we're doing to empower our youngsters on the landscape. And in most cases, Mr. Speaker, by empowering our youngsters, we're also empowering community, because it is also about empowering community. And you can imagine that if you look at the trend of sports and the fact that individuals who are involved in sports can lift the profile and lift communities. Right here we have a coach, Mr. Speaker, from your constituency. And in the area of basketball, I would have mentioned before, Station Hill is one of those staples whenever you talk about basketball in relation to the success. And what that success can do is to galvanize the community to ensure that those persons who are actively involved in the sports continue in that vein, whether it be sponsorship, whether it be the means of coming to support when they're playing. These are the things that this tool of empowerment will also redound to. And I want my young people in the constituency of St. John to understand that, when we come here, it is about them. And this today is about empowering our young people to ensure that all of the untapped talent, I constantly refer to the fact that we have a reservoir of untapped talent in this country, Mr. Speaker. And the onus is, part of it is on the government to ensure that we shine those diamonds that are coming from the rough. And I would have benefited from this individual being on the platform in the constituency of St. John, and we got rave reviews in terms of his performance on the platform in the constituency of St. John. So if not there in St. John, why not here as well? And my belief is that we have, set something in motion where other young people, not only in St. John, but will gravitate now to politics, gravitate to being involved at a level that we have not seen before. Because the truth is that a lot of young persons are turned off about what is happening in politics. And to see one of their own reach this particular level, then I believe it can re-energize them and have our young persons coming through. I know at the ministry there's a youth parliament, and if you had to sit, Mr. Speaker, and see the interaction in terms of those youngsters, then you could understand that the future is really looking bright in terms of that. And to have one of their own, elevated to the status of what we are seeing now, can only redound to positive in relation to how we go forward. Mr. Speaker, sports training is one of the other things that is happening within the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. And I would have mentioned, and I'm hoping that by the end of this month or so that we can again get back to having sports on the landscape in an active way. A lot of NFs have been calling and asking when are we going to restart. And our teams are in competition outside of the country, and we need to move to a stage where practice and playing and getting involved again in competitive activity is par for the course. Mr. Speaker, I believe that a lot of our community projects, in recent time, I have asked that we move away from providing participants with certificates of participation and move to a stage where our young people have a certificate at the end of the day that would provide entry-level qualifications into the areas that they're looking to. Because it makes no sense to be involved in a program for 3-4 months, and at the end of the day, you have a level of competencies as a result of the tutoring, and all you're getting is a certificate of participation that means absolutely nothing. So we're actively looking at having all of our programs accredited so that when our young people complete these programs, that they have something that is fairly marketable going forward. The Youth Achieving Results. This is another program that is not really known by the wider public that is happening within the ministry. And we have performing arts where we take people again who are interested in the performing arts. We do voice training, we have instruments, and these guys are trained by professionals. We work in partnership with the National Cultural Foundation to ensure that we have tutors who are at a level that can really, really deliver. And we have seen success in terms of those persons moving from this particular program and getting involved in NIFCA. We have seen persons move from this particular program and being involved in music, in the music industry in a meaningful way. We have the visual arts, Mr. Speaker, which is a component of the same Youth Achieving Results, where persons get involved in different arts in terms of painting. Again, we have seen people move from there into NIFCA. We have seen people start their own business, and they're parenting, Mr. Speaker, with our sister program. This is the Youth Development Program. They're parenting with YES. So we're providing an opportunity not only to learn a skill or to learn a discipline, but we're providing you with an opportunity then to move to the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme, where you go through all of the rigors in terms of how to manage your business, how at the end of the day that you can be a successful entrepreneur. So this particular amendment today, Mr. Speaker, may be targeting a particular area, but I see it as a move and a tool of empowerment, not only in this case, but saying to the young people in Barbados, this particular government, as always, when we take over the reins of government, the Barbados Labour Party, that your future is secure, that you can move from one level to the other level, knowing that the government of the day will hold your hand. And it is evident, like I said, in every single case that you can look at. The community projects, Mr. Speaker. And this is one of the areas that we're looking to revamp. This is one of the areas where I've asked that we look at more entrepreneurial projects than projects that are just fun projects, so to speak. And I'll give you an example. Only 2 months ago in my constituency, there was a training project where 15 unemployed young females engaged in dressmaking. But why dressmaking? There are 3 primary schools within the constituency of St. John. And if it is the case that we can move these unemployed females to a level where they can manufacture uniforms for the 3 primary schools in St. John, then you can see where this project is going. So projects of this nature, what we're hoping to do is to have that training program certified, where persons can actually then branch out if they want to get involved in the industry. If it is the case they want to be totally self-employed, to provide those kind of services to the 3 primary schools within the constituency of St. John. And these are the projects that I'm pushing that we should have again at community level, where all of us can have interaction with the youth officers that is attached to the particular constituency, and initiate projects that you believe can redound to persons being self-employed, persons becoming employers as well. So when this amendment is put in place, finally, Mr. Speaker, and we have persons who are 18 years old that can now enter these chambers to be involved in decision-making at the highest level, I welcome it, and I'm hoping that those young persons who are in 6th form or 5th form and looking to get involved in politics at a serious level will understand that government is paving the way in a meaningful way for them to get involved. Because oftentimes young people believe that, one of the things we do is that we speak down to them. And that is not necessarily the case. One of the planks that caused the success of this particular ministry that I'm in now is the fact that we kind of start from a bottom-up approach, Mr. Speaker. Youth officers, they go to the ground and they try to ascertain from the young people what it is exactly that you're interested in. And then programs are put in place, because it is a failed attempt to go and put programs in place and expect the young people then to gravitate to these particular programs. But if programs come directly from the young people that we are tasked to serve, then the success rate is always greater when we do that. And the results are there. We have seen where over and over again that when you go to the ground and you get that information and come back and plan your programs, that the success rate is greater. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we're looking at as well is to have a more meaningful relationship with the prison population that is within our target group. And in youth affairs, we go from 9 to 29. And I believe that persons make mistakes, and if they're in the prison system, then we should not turn our backs on them. There should be programs that are put in place, and I know that some programs are in place, but we need to have programs coming from central government that will provide an opportunity to reintegrate those persons who are in the prison system back into society. And one of the things that we're looking at is to see how we can nurture that relationship with the prison system to ensure that when those individuals who would have made mistakes and looking to recover and need a second chance, that government and the Ministry of Youth is providing that opportunity, whether it be training, whether it be counseling, whatever is necessary. We have about 32 officers who work on the ground on a daily basis, and those officers are expected to interact with those people who are coming out of the system and to do some tracking, to do some meaningful interventions. And if we can do that, I am sure that we will cut down on what is happening in terms of persons returning to the system. And I believe that this is a program that we should trigger as soon as possible, and I know officers are actively looking to do that. In addition to that, all of the programs that we have within the ministry will have a tracking component attached to all of them. And when I say tracking, what do I mean by that? You have projects, you have individuals who are involved in the process, And after they exit the particular program, by and large, they're on their own. And we're looking to change that, where at a period of 4 months, the officers will interact with them and find out what is going on. We will track them for a period of 1 year. And we will see what is the success rate in relation to those persons who would have exited the program, what we need to tweak, if what we're doing is actually working at the level that we want to see it happening at. I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, Project Oasis. And the last government, the Democratic Labour Party government, would have shut down the program and changed the name. It has come back in another format, and what we still have is a relationship with those institutions that provide training. So you have persons who are unemployed and at risk, or what we call at risk, are able to source training programs at the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic. They're able to source programs at the Barbados Vocational Training Board. And this is a partnership that is working well for us in terms of getting people into the program. So you have a situation, Mr. Speaker, where if it is a case that the entry-level requirements for these programs are normally 4 CXCs, and you have youngsters who are at home or on the block, as we put it, they can now source those same programs through the initiative from the ministry, and this is called the Next Step Training Initiative. And those persons go into the program, Mr. Speaker, and they do exceedingly well. And I'm speaking again from experience, and I want to return to that particular project, Project Oasis. And we saw individuals who were linemen on the block. I'm talking about hardcore block men who would have gone to Palm Marine and completed programs, for example, the cooking classes. I know, for example, of one individual who came from a block and is now gainfully employed at one of the villas in Sandy Lane. So when I refer to the fact that we're looking to unearth talent, when I refer to the fact that there's a reservoir of untapped talent within Barbados, I know exactly what I'm speaking of, because I have been there, Mr. Speaker, and I have seen the changes in the lives of individuals who all they required was an opportunity and a second chance to do good in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I fully support the amendment to this constitution that would allow persons at the age of 18 to get involved in politics at this particular level. I believe it is something that can only benefit our young people. And every day, Mr. Speaker, I go to work with one intention, and that is to facilitate the needs and aspirations of the young people in this country. I'm doing the same thing in the constituency of St. John, but those persons in that constituency made it possible for me to do it at the macro level. And I really look forward to bringing the necessary changes that we will see in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture to benefit all of the young people who are interested, and even those who may be on the fringe, that the staff at the ministry can get them involved into something positive. There's a kind of mandate right now that we need to have at least 30 or so new clubs started in Barbados. And at some point in time, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to reporting that that target was met and that we're on the way to really and truly empowering communities through our young people. That is the next wave of all that is good in this country. And I'm sure, very sure, that this government is doing all that is necessary to ensure that none of them are left behind, because the resources are there, and we are going to make sure that everyone benefit. Some of the initiatives that I have identified here, Mr. Speaker, are coming on stream, in particular the SAT training, because a lot of our youngsters can use that scholarship to move them and their family to the next level. And we do not intend to hinder them in any way. So if it is a case that this particular initiative is coming from out of central government, then I believe that there's no fear of persons not being able to take up that opportunity as a result of not having the finances to pay somebody to provide the service of them doing the SATs training. Mr. Speaker, I think that I have identified some of the things that are coming from within my ministry in relation to how we are proposing to go forward, to move our young people forward. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that if we accomplish this, if it is the case that we can empower our young people, then I'm sure that communities will be made stronger, and at the end of the day, it will benefit all of us as a whole. I am obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to start, sir, by thanking the good people of St. James South for giving me the opportunity to represent them again in the House of Parliament. And I want to thank them not only for their support, but for their active vote in the last elections. And part of the experience of that last elections was to see more young people actually motivated and activated, wanting to contribute in a meaningful way and participate in the election and participate in the democracy. And that is why this afternoon I stand to support the bill that is before us, the amendment, because I believe that in providing a method for young people who have an interest, who have a talent, who want to engage our political process, it must be encouraged at all costs. And therefore, I want to fully support what is being done. As was outlined by some of the earlier speakers, and I want to congratulate our maiden speech that was made by the Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown. Well done. And I also want to thank the new Minister of Youth and Sports for sharing the comprehensive program that the Barbados Labour Party administration has for youth in this country. I want people to recognize that we understand the absolute importance of bridging that separation that has been going on in our country, where young people feel disenfranchised and separated from what is happening in Barbados. And that we have to recognize that these are the young people who will be the new political leaders of tomorrow. And if we do not engage them, if we do not pull them into the system, if we don't give them a voice and an opportunity to be able to make changes, to raise their voices and suggest new ways, to accommodate their dreams, to build out the youth economy, where we're able to look at the new things they want to bring to life and provide them with the platforms on which to express it as a business and help them to go global, then we will be destroying our own security as Barbadians. Because without them engaging and doing well, then we will become old people in a society that is not able to function because we did not properly integrate our youth into our society and into our economy. And that's why I want to particularly congratulate this effort to include the young man, Mr. Kofdawala, within the political process. I had the privilege and honor of having him speak on my platform. It excited the young people to see him there. Yes, indeed, we had persons who were listening. Who's that young man? He sounds very, oh, that's the young man, Mr. Kofdawala. They were very impressed with him, and I was very pleased that he was able to come and share. So I want to congratulate him on that. Now, in relation to the issue of our democracy, one of the things that I was deeply concerned about was the reliance of the Democratic Labour Party on the issue of creating a fear that our democracy is at risk, we're losing it, you have to vote for an opposition, and so on. The reason why I deprecate that, Mr. Speaker, is because that tactic of fear, to make people feel that it is their duty to protect a political party, rather than a political party taking responsibility for itself, take responsibility for developing programs, take responsibility to attract to its membership people of quality who, when presented before the public could see them as a viable alternative, see them as people who are willing to govern. They do not wish to do that hard work, but would rather frighten the people of Barbados into thinking that we have a despotic government, that democracy is at risk. Sir, I feel that what we are doing here is important to demonstrate to Barbadians that their democracy is not at risk. Indeed, sir, as was pointed out earlier, our aim in making certain changes to the Constitution, whether it is to allow a young person to be involved or whether it is to enable and to enshrine in the Constitution the opportunity for the party with the most votes but did not get seats in Parliament to have an opportunity to be represented so that their voices can continue to be heard within the parliamentary structure is a demonstration of our commitment to the issue of democracy. The challenge that I have experienced and that concerns me as a citizen, however, Mr. Speaker, is the level of disengagement that you find sometimes among people about the political process. And I want to make a document of the House, an article by a lady by the name of Elia Somen, who spoke about the issue of democracy. And I want to pull two excerpts from it, Mr. Speaker, because I think it speaks to us and what is happening. And that's why I want to applaud what we're doing in order to scotch the problem which has begun to emerge in our society. She writes, "Democracy is supposed to be the rule of the people, by the people, and for the people. But in order to rule effectively, people need political knowledge. If they know little or nothing about government, it becomes difficult to hold political leaders accountable for their performance. Unfortunately, public knowledge about politics is disturbingly low. In addition, the public also often does a poor job of evaluating the political information they do know. This state of affairs has persisted despite rising education levels, increased availability of information thanks to modern technology, and even rising IQ scores." And she goes on to say, "It is mostly the result of rational behavior, not stupidity." Now that caught me. How could the disengagement and not being willing to look at the political process and be more involved be the result of rational behavior? Because as a politician and as a citizen, I am deeply concerned about how our political process works, how we work our democracy, and that people are engaged in strong civic behavior. And therefore, the disengagement can be a puzzle to me. But she went on to note a comment by the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. He says, look, "The single hardest thing for a practicing politician to understand is that most people, most of the time, don't give politics a first thought all day long. Or if they do, it is with a sigh before going back to worrying about the kids, the parents, the mortgage, the boss, their friends, their weight, their health, etc. Most people don't precisely calculate the odds that their vote will make a difference, but they probably have an intuitive sense that the chances are very small, and therefore they act accordingly. That people feel that their vote will not make a difference." And therefore, Mr. Speaker, anything that we can do as a government, that we can do as a country to broaden participation, to educate people, to share with them, to have consultations, to pull in differing views, all of these things helps to diffuse the political knowledge that people need to understand in order to keep their democracy healthy and strong. Now, Mr. Speaker, from where I sit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and keeping abreast of what is happening in countries across the world, I am disturbed by the number of coups that you have around the world, the political dislocation, the foment of unrest. I'm disturbed by the fact that social media is now being used to destabilize governments, and that people now are at they are literally just fodder for people to consume politically, to dupe them with public relations, to dupe them with false news and false information in an effort making them pawns in their own bigger games of economic and political dominance in the world. This is very, very disturbing. And the only way we can protect our population from those efforts, and we've seen this with the issue of the vaccine. We've seen this with a number of other issues. And the only way to be able to protect our population is to make sure that there's adequate political knowledge and adequate political engagement. And therefore, anything that we do as an administration to ensure that people can participate, that their voices can be heard, that they can get information, it is important to do. That's why the Freedom of Information Act is going to be important. We've got a whole suite of legislation that we've already passed and will be passed in order to assist in keeping the democracy accountable, keeping it free of corruption, empowering people to have a say and to have knowledge about what is happening on their behalf and what is being done in their name. This is very important, Mr. Speaker. For me, the greatest safeguard in your democracy are the people themselves. The people engaging. And how do they do this? One is the area of watchfulness. Now, I think the watchfulness must go beyond brass tacks. Brass tacks, I think, was probably a good start because we came from a place where people were afraid to speak politically. People were afraid I'm going to lose my job, somebody going to attack me, somebody going to unfair me, and so on and so forth. And brass tacks really helped Barbadians to start to speak out. But then it became a hostage then to political actors because some days all you can hear were people B and D talking all the time and trying to sway the public opinion. And the average ordinary citizen stopped engaging. As a matter of fact, I remember when the station tried, they said, well, today no political people. Let's just have the ordinary citizen coming up and speaking and sharing their thoughts. Could not get 10 people to keep the program going. The program was only lively when the political actors stood up and started talking and sharing and so on. And that imbalance at times created a negative effect for the society. So one of the things we have to do is to be able to get past brass tacks. Yes, we need it, but to encourage it to go further and to have other ways in which people can engage the process of politics. The other thing would be you need that watchfulness by the various organs in the society. Whether you're talking about the media, whether you're talking about educational institutions like your universities, whether you're talking about associations who may focus on their particular area, whether it is about people being physically challenged, if it's about sports, if it's about business, whatever it is, that those associations begin to play a role in speaking up and engaging the political process. Then there are the trade unions who have a role to play in being able to put the case of labor. Then you have the individual himself or herself engaging in their own right to speak up within that political process. Now, what does speaking up mean? One of the things, Mr. Speaker, that I found particularly challenging in the last term was that in some cases, some of the organs that should have worked were not working as well as they should. There was some indifference to what was happening. Then we had the problem of population having information overload. There was just so much information coming at such a rapid pace. People could not keep up with it, and they weren't following. Therefore, it made it easy for people to come and make claims about the government that were not true. It was difficult to keep up with all of those claims to begin with, to be able to correct them. But it meant that people were swamped by too much information that made it difficult for them to assess what their government was doing on their behalf. And it doesn't mean that when they examine it that they would love everything, but at least they should be able to see, know, and understand the truth and come to a conclusion about it. So what is needed? Now, there are some people in our country who feel concerned by the state of affairs in the Democratic Labour Party. And My position to them is this. Any healthy organization, any healthy organism always has hygiene processes that work within them. Our own bodies have that. Our bodies have an internal hygiene process, and we have an external hygiene process where we make sure we get a bath and we do all the things that help to keep us clean and healthy, and we put on our mask so we don't get COVID. So there are two sets of processes going on. In any body, whether it's an association, whether it's a parliamentary group, whether it is a political party, whether it is whatever group it is, there must be internal hygiene factors where the people who are engaged in that association are looking and evaluating what they're doing. When they get off track, try to bring it back on track, where contending views can be heard, and then you are able to arrive at a good conclusion because people have had a say. That's important. The external is equally important, where people who are looking on are able to point out when something is going right, when something is going wrong. Internal and external hygiene factors are absolutely necessary for a good functioning association or group. The issue here, Mr. Speaker, is that if we are deeply committed, and that only comes, sir, when you are deeply committed to the philosophy, when you're deeply committed to the vision of your group or your organization, that you will act in a way that helps to keep it on track, that helps to keep it strong and help to keep it vibrant. And I believe, sir, that one of the reasons why the Democratic Labour Party ended where it was that their hygiene factors were not working. And so when the deterioration set in, nothing was there to halt it. So that now the party is so far away from where its founding father had brought it. Sorry. And they have never been able, all they can keep pointing people to is remember our founding father, what he did, how good he was, but cannot point to anything that has happened since then. Why? Because it did not take care of their hygiene factors. Whereas when you look at the Barbados Labour Party, because we do take care of it, what happens? You're able to throw up leader after leader, group after group, that is able to bring something to the table and add something to the legacy. So for Barbados going forward, sir, and I want to end with this, it is very important that we take care of our associations and our groups, keep them clean, keep them healthy, keep them on track. They also need to be inclusive. They have to be able to allow people of differing racial groups, differing ages, different points of view, that they're able to engage the process and be a part of it. And that's why I'm so proud of this piece of legislation that we're championing here in this honourable chamber, to allow a young person to be able to be a part of it. In St. James South, we are deeply committed to helping our youth to participate more within the civics of the country and to participate more within the community. Even this evening, we are starting and launching a mentoring program in which we are going to have people who are willing to learn how to mentor the youth, to make themselves available so that we are able to reach out to young people and help nurture them and help them to achieve the goals which they have. I think that this is extremely important, and I'm looking forward to the programs that are being put on by our Ministry of Youth, because I believe that these programs, once we help our youth to engage, will help to keep them on a path that is productive and that is going to bring them to a place of prosperity and success in their lives. And what that will do, that will take care of the future of Barbados and actually safeguard its democracy, because we take the time to educate them, help them to engage, help them to understand, and then give them opportunity to be able to express that and to be able to be a part of our future going forward. So I just want to congratulate colleagues on this, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your patience and opportunity to share those few thoughts.
Honourable Michael Sophies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to lend my voice to this very important debate which seeks to amend the Constitution yet again. And at the outset, I want to, as other colleagues have done, echo the sentiments and the gratitude to my constituents in St. Michael Southeast and to wider Barbados, because I believe I'm not only the representative of St. Michael Southeast, but I believe that I represent all Barbadians in the way in which I conduct my tenure in public life. And therefore, I'm grateful to them for their continued support as well and encouragement to me throughout the course of my political career. I want to commend the Honourable Member for the City, who has made his maiden speech. I know others in the chamber who are also new members will also take the opportunity in due course to do the same. And to say that this is particularly historic, that we are debating a constitutional amendment which in part addresses the issue of youth and youth participation in the chamber, and in particular to have a young man from the city who has demonstrated by his many levels of service a passion and a commitment and a dedication to helping not only young people, but certainly being able to be at the forefront of making a lot of social change across this country. I think this is truly a distinct honor to be in this chamber today, Mr. Speaker, to witness what we have seen here today. I too, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud today because, this is a Barbados Labour Party of which I know no other when it comes to political life. I have come out of the bosom of the Barbados Labour Party. I do so proudly, and I'm proud of the record, the long record of being able to come from a party that has made significant achievements in this country, that has basically blazed a trail and kept Barbadians punching above their weight for generations. I am proud to be associated with a party that at every stage of the country's development has tried to improve the lives of ordinary Barbadians, not of any one particular political party, but certainly for all Barbadians, and therefore by its policies has tried to undo some of the injustices that have taken place over the years. The Honourable Member for St. Joseph, the Honourable Prime Minister, and others have spoken before me and indicated that what we are really doing here is not uncharted waters, but rather it is really continuing what the Barbados Labour Party stands for, and certainly what we as a government stand for. And it simply isn't just about amending the Constitution just to make way for a young man to enter politics, or it's not simply about being able to give the opposition an opportunity to have a voice. I believe that this is very significant because it also speaks to the underlying philosophy of the Barbados Labour Party in being able to create opportunities for people to serve, to give people who ordinarily may not have a voice the opportunity to be heard. It allows us to be able to ensure that we preserve our democracy in a way that allows us, even though we have a 30-seat majority in this House, that we are able to still send a message that we are not pompous, we are not above ourselves, we don't feel that we know everything or that we can solve everything, but therefore that we are able to almost extend the olive branch to others to keep us on our toes, and certainly to be that other voice sometimes that we need to hear in a chamber such as this as we proceed to make policy in the interests of the people. But the truth of the matter is that the party has often given young people the opportunity to serve. I benefited from being able to sit on 3 statutory boards when I was a lot younger, and benefited in such a way that even at the time I don't think I quite understood what the then Honourable Prime Minister Arthur was doing in giving me that opportunity as a young attorney. But I later came to appreciate how government worked. A lot of times as young people you want things to happen quickly. But by having that exposure, I understood that everything you want can't happen all at the same time. And equally, that you had to understand the different layers of governance in order to be able to craft the policies and to do the things that were right by the people. And so I have seen this party also create opportunities where we encourage members to, on their statutory boards, to make sure that there is always a young person that sits on each of our statutory boards. I had the pleasure in education to appoint on each of the secondary school boards young people who, again, regardless of their political persuasion, were given the opportunity to serve and have done so in a commendable manner. I also am mindful that I was one of the two senators that was chosen at the time by the then Prime Minister Arthur to be in the Senate. At that time, the member for St. James North would have been in the Senate as well, senior to me, but at the time I was able to learn a lot from him because I was able to come into the Senate. When there are only two of you, you have the opportunity to read up on everything possible. You have the opportunity to cover all aspects of debate except the financial matters. And it was an opportunity for which I will be eternally grateful, Mr. Speaker, because it allowed me again to have a better understanding of politics, of government, and again to put into practice a lot of what I had come to learn and to understand even as a student of politics several years before. I say all that to say, sir, that this party has been consistent. And it has been consistent in creating opportunities. It has been consistent in, even with the member for the city, giving him opportunities as well through the Youth Parliament. When our current Prime Minister was then Minister of Education, we have been consistent in the way that we have worked with our young people to develop a youth manifesto, to be able to have them to weigh in on various aspects of policy and policy making. And we have also been consistent in relation to this particular amendment in that there is a recognition by the party that we cannot simply talk the talk but not walk the walk. That if it is that, just as I did as a young child, spoke on my first political platform at 16, understood that this was what I wanted to do, that I understood that I wanted to serve the people of my country, that I wanted to have a vested interest in the affairs of my country, that I wanted to be, as many of my colleagues have chosen to be firm craftsmen of our fate. That at the end of the day, that we all had this opportunity to be able to in a sense, be mentored and to be turned in a direction where we had this opportunity to be able to serve. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we look at this particular amendment and lowering of the age to accommodate a young man who is well known to this country, not just well known to members on this side, but certainly well known to the country and well known to the region, and that is really one of the main reasons why I have spoken today. Because the young man who is the subject of this particular constitutional amendment is a young man, Khalil Kofdewala, who I had the pleasure as Minister of Education of being able to engage with and to watch him demonstrate his fierce representation of young people in this country and throughout the region. I watched a young man articulate himself in such a way that I had to compare him to persons who had been in politics and certainly been as lawyers for decades, and know that this young man was not cut from the same cloth as others, that this young man had something to offer to this country. And that to wait another 5-10 years for him to be able to enter public life and to be able to be given the opportunity to serve, sir, I believe, like all of my colleagues, that we would be doing not only him an injustice, but all young people like him who are interested in politics, who are interested in policy making, who are interested in making a difference in this country. So you can refer to Khalil on this occasion, but I believe that this amendment is for Khalil and every single other young person who has an interest in this area and who has committed themselves to being able to serve their country and to do right by their nation. It also means, sir, that, when I look back at those who are in this chamber with me, I also am mindful that the path that I took, I think most of them knew I was interested in politics from a young age. But what is interesting is that there are some who serve in this chamber, a member for St. Michael's South, the leader now of the Senate, who, when we were students of Barbados Community College, we believed that we could change the world. We didn't feel we could just change Barbados. We felt we could change the world. And just like the member for the city and others, we felt that everything was wrong, that nobody listened to us, and that basically we had to blaze a trail in our own way to be able to lead by example. Not just complain, but to lead by example, to help to make the difference that we wanted to see in Barbados and certainly throughout the rest of the region and indeed the world. And in our own way, sir, I believe we have accomplished a lot of what we set out to do, a lot of what our conversations were about. But we did so because we had opportunities. We did so because there were mature people who believed in us. There were teachers, there were people all across the college and certainly in our lives who were willing to risk on us. And if nothing else, sir, I believe that all of us are firm in our belief that we must also risk on our young people as well. I think we've all benefited from Prime Minister at this point in time being able to risk on many of us and to give young people an opportunity. She has not moved from her position from the early days in terms of investing in youth and investing in youth in culture, investing in youth in the arts. We see it. We saw it in Freedom Square. We saw a vision for Barbados come alive from a leader of this country who conceptualized it from the time that she was Minister of Education and holding the portfolio for culture. And we saw the baby being matured into what it is today, sir. I say to you that we are fortunate in this chamber, and we're fortunate to be living in a time where we can actually control our destiny, where we don't just accept what it was in the Constitution over 50 years ago, but we are able now to say we want to change the Constitution to make it more relevant to us. And I think that for me, for this moment that we stand here to be able to do that, I think it is very significant that we are not afraid to go where nobody else has gone before. The others in the region can look at us and say, why are we opening up the thing for the parliament for young people to be able to come in and serve? Well, we do so because we have climbed up the backs of other young people, and we can't now push down the ladder because we have stood on the shoulders of others to be able to get where we are. So we have a responsibility to make sure that we open those doors, just as we understand as females in public life that we have been able to shatter the glass ceiling for women in this country and throughout the world by what we have now represented in this country of women in high places being able to do things to pull along other women, not because they are women, but because we understand the history and the difficulty that women have been confronted with in this country over the years. And we understand our responsibility to pave the way, to start to level the playing field so that young girls in this country and men who have young children who are female can also aspire to being the Prime Minister or the Deputy Prime Minister or the leader of the Senate or the President of this country. That is what the Barbados Labour Party philosophy is about. And so this is not just a constitutional amendment on its own. This is a philosophy of the Barbados Labour Party in which many of us have signed on to, many of us have bought into. And therefore, that is why we are here today, sir, to be able to give that freedom to our ability to express how we feel about the Barbados in which we want to live in and the Barbados in which we want people to recognize and to want to come to work in as well. Constitutions all over the world have had changes. And when I think of the India's constitution has been amended 103 times. We're a small country. Ours has not had the same level of tampering with over the years. But it says to me that if a country like India could make amendments to its constitution, as the Honourable Member for St. Joseph said, it's a living constitution. It's a living document. It therefore means that you have, as policymakers, to be willing to make the changes that are necessary based on the society's changes over a period of time. The U.S. Constitution has only had about 27 amendments in its history. But the truth of the matter is there have been 3 significant things which have occurred within the U.S. Constitution that I want to make the point on, because people need to understand the context of why policymakers make changes. And perhaps then you will understand why this is significant in opening up the doors for other young people and certainly for democracy in this country to prevail. There was an amendment in the United States which was probably one of the most important amendments because it related to the rights of men and women never to be slaves again. And many of us have connections to the United States of America. I mean, I can't imagine a world in which, this would obtain, because that is not the society in which I have grown up. But I understand that there were people who were slaves. Our forefathers were slaves. But to have to enshrine in a constitution that people had basic rights, and certainly not only rights, but also so that they had to be respected in a way because they were of a particular color, says a lot about the fact that America had to put this into a constitution to enshrine certain basic rights for people. They also went as far as to indicate that with the 14th Amendment, which dealt with citizenship, that allowed persons born or naturalized in the U.S. To be able to vote. Again, another significant achievement for persons living in the United States and born into the United States. And then with the 19th Amendment, which followed the movement for women's suffrage in America, a key part of it required every state then to allow women to vote. Again, things that we take for granted. We were able, through the late Sir Grantley Adams, to be able to make the progress in Barbados to allow not only women to be able to vote, but to open up the doors for people of color to be able to vote. Another significant achievement in our history. So we are not tampering with the Constitution. When you look at why constitutions in many cases are changed, it is also to allow persons to be given additional rights as well, which the truth of the matter is no man has the right to determine whether people should have these fundamental rights and freedoms within a society. We as a party have said, we brought the Charter of Barbados to this chamber, and there were many who did not agree that we should take a position that people shouldn't be discriminated against on the basis of sex, of race, of age, of anything, political affiliation. But we stood firm and resolute in our position because we understand that what may have obtained before and what may have oppressed us before as a people must no longer be able to obtain in a 2022 Barbados. And we as policymakers were prepared to take the licks when it came, because we understood that people of all walks of life, no matter who they are, born in Barbados, must have the opportunity to be the best that they can be in this country. And the only way that we can ensure that people's rights are protected is if, as policymakers, we make it abundantly clear by enshrining these things, whether in the Constitution or by the passage of legislation in this chamber. It is also, Mr. Speaker, important to note that this party has also taken a position that, as it relates to the future of Barbados, and there's a group called Future Barbados, of which I am proud to have been associated with as well. Young people who have been educated in Barbados, but young people who have blazed a trail overseas by virtue of their access to tertiary education, and who want to give back to this country. Persons who, because of their love for country, they can live anywhere in the world. But these are all young people who the Prime Minister has put together this team to be able to work with them so that Bajans can find solutions for Bajan problems. And we have a responsibility to make sure that Barbadians of all walks of life, young people, old people, everybody, but in particular our youth, because they are the future, that they feel as though there is a place for them within this society, that there is a place for them, not just when it comes time to vote, but that they have a say through another young person or other young people to be able to represent their views and their interests in the House of Parliament. So we understand that people may not always agree with the positions that this administration may take. When we put toilets in the fields for the agricultural workers, people had a problem with that too. But we erased decades of injustice to ordinary workers in this country because we understood our responsibility to our people to not do what others had done before. We understood when we created the vending policy and the vending legislation that we had a responsibility for those who have come out of the bosom of slavery to create a better space for people to work in, to make sure that the areas where they are is sanitized, to make sure that people can still play their trade in a way that they are respected and that the others will respect them as well. We get it. We know that people feel we give too much to the vendors. But we don't retreat from our position. As a former member for the city has said, no retreat, no surrender. Because when we stand on the philosophy of the Barbados Labour Party, we stand on a sound philosophy that not only protects the members of the Barbados Labour Party, but is intended to protect all Barbadians across this country. So we know that there are some who feel that we ain't supposed to enfranchise those who are most vulnerable and give them houses and make sure that people are able to have a piece of this rock. We get that. We ain't gonna ever get consensus on everything. We know that. But it's a philosophy upon which we stand as a party which understands that by giving people a piece of the rock, that you empower them, you give them better social conditions, you therefore improve their economic conditions, and you make people have greater pride in who they are as well. We are also a party that through this constitutional amendment is also demonstrating in relation to the opposition that we are not afraid of any opposition in any chamber. Because we could, I tell you straight, if it was that we were the opposition or we were in a position of the Democratic Labour Party administration, I can tell you for a fact they would not be trying to do what we are trying to do today. It would not happen. But we are not afraid as a party to allow people to have a space. We have demonstrated it with our people's assemblies. We've demonstrated it with the Thorn Commission. We have demonstrated it at every juncture that we consult and consult and consult. That we try to get consensus as much as possible, because the one thing we understand is that maintaining our stability in this country is the one thing that we have been able to pride ourselves on through successive generations. And therefore, as the Prime Minister indicated earlier, she has limited her powers. You know, as the AG said, you know, when you hear the Prime Minister is a despot, I don't know of whom they speak. Because the truth of the matter is, you hear all the time the Prime Minister is all-powerful, or a Prime Minister is all-powerful. And I have watched over the course of the last few years a reduction in the powers of Prime Minister, to the point where you wonder to yourself, what are we really doing? But we understand that when you have power, you also have a greater responsibility to the people to make sure that the people are able to participate in the democracy as well. And so these provisions cannot just be seen on their own. They must be treated in such a way that they're understood in a context and an underlying philosophy of the Barbados Labour Party, of the Barbados government at this juncture in our history, and one upon which all Barbadians ought to be proud. There will be criticism, Mr. Speaker. There will be criticism from all circles. But as I said before, we understand the criticism, and we will temper the criticism as we have done over the course of the past few years. But the truth of the matter is that on every occasion that we have made these significant changes, few weeks later, few months later, Barbados is heralded as blazing a trail in the region. Barbados is heralded for going where no other country has wanted to go, big or small. And I therefore say to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, that we must be proud Barbadians, we must be proud members of this government in defending the record, because the record is strong. And we have a leader who is not afraid to take the decisions and to work with us as 30 MPs to be able to do the things that are right by this country. And so therefore, I have but just one thing left to say, that I totally support these amendments. Perhaps it has highlighted the fact that the opposition, whatever the party is, need to get their act together. And perhaps that is what has come out from what we are attempting to do. But that is a matter for them to deal with, to determine who is their leader, to determine how they put their parties back together. But what we understand is that we're going to allow our young people to participate, and we're going to give voice to the people who stand in the breach as an opposition in this country. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the sitting until 4 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chairman be suspended until 4 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 4 p.m.